December 7, 1990, a cemetery in Shakhty, Russia. Investigators stood watching as a tall man in wire-rimmed glasses walked calmly between gravestones. He stopped at an unmarked patch of earth. "Here," he said quietly. Officers began digging. Within minutes, a small shoe emerged from the soil. The man showed no emotion. Detective Isa Kostoyev couldn't believe what he was witnessing. For 12 years, they'd hunted this person. Dozens of families destroyed. Children vanished. Women disappeared. Now here he stood, a former teacher, a grandfather, a Communist Party member, leading them to graves only he knew existed. "How many more?" someone asked. The man adjusted his glasses. "I lost count around 40, he replied, as casually as discussing the weather. Nobody in that cemetery knew they were standing with one of history's most dangerous offenders. And nobody could have guessed how many times police had let him walk away. Andrei Romanovich Chikatilo was born October 16, 1936, in the Ukrainian village of Yablochnoye during one of history's darkest periods. Stalin's forced collectivization had created the Holodomor, a famine that took 6 to 8 million lives. People starved in the streets. Some resorted to extreme measures to survive. His mother shared stories with young Andrei about his older brother Stefan, who she claimed had been taken by neighbors and met a tragic fate before Andrei was born. The truth of Stefan's existence was never confirmed. However, these troubling accounts left a lasting impression on young Andrei's psyche, shaping his worldview in profound ways that would influence him throughout his life. World War II brought more trauma: German occupation, constant bombings. His father Roman was captured by Nazis and held in a concentration camp. When he returned in 1945, the Soviet state branded him a traitor. Anyone captured was considered weak, suspicious. The entire family was scorned. They lived in a one-room hut. Poverty was crushing. Andrei later claimed they ate grass and leaves to diminish hunger. He said he didn't taste bread until age 12. Andrei suffered from hydrocephalus, excess fluid in the brain. This caused urinary tract problems and bedwetting that continued into his late teens. His mother beat him for it. Other children mocked him relentlessly. He also suffered from severe nearsightedness, but refused to wear glasses, fearing more ridicule. He couldn't see the chalkboard from the back of the classroom. "I used to sit and cry," he later recalled. By his teenage years, another problem emerged. He couldn't maintain physical intimacy. This humiliation became a source of deep rage and shame that would define his existence. At 17, he had his first encounter with a girl. He threw himself on her. He was driven by a need for control and power over others. This connection between violence and gratification was permanently established in his mind. Despite his struggles, Andrei showed academic promise. He had an exceptional memory and could recall long strings of numbers. He became editor of his school newspaper, explaining political events to other students. He embraced communist ideology completely. But Moscow University rejected his application. He convinced himself it was because of his father's war capture. In reality, other students simply performed better on entrance exams. This rejection crushed him. He attended a local technical school instead. After graduation, he was drafted into military service for 3 years. During this time, his peers discovered his problems with intimacy. Rumors spread that he was gay, a horrifying accusation in Soviet society. In 1963, his sister arranged his marriage to Feodosia Odnicheva. She was confident and outgoing, everything he wasn't. They married, though their physical relationship was difficult. Through various means, they had 2 children, daughter Ludmila in 1965 and son Yuri in 1969. In 1971, Andrei earned a degree in Russian literature from Rostov University. He found work as a teacher, hoping for respect and acceptance. Instead, he found humiliation. Students didn't take him seriously. They mocked him, called him the goose, Russian slang for someone who inspires zero respect, refused to behave. He had no control. His behavior toward students became increasingly inappropriate. He violated professional boundaries, entering dormitories without authorization and acting improperly. In May 1973, during a school outing at a river, an incident occurred involving a 15-year-old student named Lyuba. Other students heard her distress and came to investigate. He should have been arrested. Instead, he was simply forced to resign in January 1974. He moved to another school. The pattern continued. By 1978, complaints piled up about inappropriate behavior with students, both girls and boys. This should have ended his teaching career. It should have put him in prison. Instead, faculty chose not to report it. Andrei bought a rundown house near the Grushevka River in Shakti, his private place, away from his family, away from questions. It was here that his darkest fantasies would become horrifying reality. December 22nd, 1978. 9-year-old Yelena Zakotnova walked home from school. Near a bus stop, a tall man with glasses approached her. He seemed kind. She mentioned needing a restroom. The man said his house was nearby. She could use it there. He led her to the small rundown house by the river. Once inside, he locked the door. Yelena would never leave alive. Chikatilo attempted to assault her but couldn't achieve physical intimacy. Rage consumed him. He stabbed her 3 times in the abdomen. The sight of her blood gave him the satisfaction he'd never experienced before. He strangled her. He carried her body to the Grushevka River and threw her remains and school bag into the water. Her body was found 2 days later on December 24th. Police investigated thoroughly. A neighbor mentioned seeing young girls entering Chikatilo's house. They found blood on his doorstep. The light was still on inside. Everything pointed to him. Investigators questioned Chikatilo 8 or 9 times, but his wife said he was home that evening. They believed her. Instead, police focused on Alexander Kravchenko, age 25, who had served 6 years for a previous offense. Under brutal interrogation, Kravchenko confessed. He was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 15 years. But public wanted more punishment. A new judge gave him the death sentence. Kravchenko was executed by firing squad in 1984 for a crime he didn't commit. The real perpetrator walked free. And the experience taught him something terrible. He could get away with this. 3 years passed. Chikatilo later said he struggled with what he'd done, tried to suppress the urges, but the psychological dam had broken. September 3rd, 1981. 17-year-old Larisa Tkachenko waited at a bus stop outside Rostov Public Library. She'd run away from boarding school. When Chikatilo approached offering food and drink, she agreed to go with him. He led her to woods by the Don River. The attack was worse than his first. He'd learned from experience, got more confident. He bit off parts of her body, stabbed her many times, danced around her afterward, feeling happy. June 1982. 13-year-old Lyubov Biryuk was sent by her mother to a nearby village for food. When the bus didn't come, she walked. Chikatilo caught up with her on that walk. He led her behind bushes and attacked. Her body was found 2 weeks later, decomposed to bones. The frequency increased. July 1982. 14-year-old Lyubov Volobuyeva. August. 9-year-old Oleg Podjivayev, his first male victim. 3 days later, 16-year-old Olga Kuprina. September. 19-year-old Irina Korabelnikova, and 15-year-old Sergei Kuzmin. December, 10-year-old Olga Stalmachinok. By year's end, at least 7 confirmed victims. But geographical spread made connecting cases difficult. Rostov, Shakhty, Novoshakhtinsk. Different police jurisdictions meant poor communication. Chikatilo had a new job as supply clerk. It required travel all over the Soviet Union. Perfect cover. He could move between cities freely. His victim choices showed planning: runaways, homeless people, those with learning problems, people whose disappearance wouldn't be noticed right away. He found them near bus and train stations, offering food, money, or help. By late 1982, Rostov police could no longer ignore the pattern. They formed a special investigation unit, Operation Forest Strip, named after where most victims were found. But they faced challenges unique to the Soviet system. The official position was that serial offenders didn't exist in communist society. That was a Western problem. Admitting otherwise meant acknowledging system failure. Media was suppressed, no public warnings. Families received little information. People had no idea that someone was systematically targeting the vulnerable. Initial theories were wildly off. Police suspected satanic cults, organ harvesting gangs, groups of mentally handicapped individuals from local institutions. They arrested men with learning difficulties and interrogated them brutally. 5 men confessed to involvement, but they couldn't say where crimes happened, how many victims, or who the victims were. When the offenses continued while they were in custody, all were released. One had already taken his own life. In March 1983, Moscow sent Major Mikhail Fedosov to take charge. His assessment was harsh. Local police were incompetent and overwhelmed. The crimes were obviously connected. One person was responsible. A proper task force formed. Detective Viktor Burakov led forensic analysis. He was experienced and dedicated. Dr. Alexander Bukovsky, a psychiatrist, was brought in to create a psychological profile, unusual for Soviet investigations. He theorized the perpetrator would be 45 to 50 years old, educated, sexually dysfunctional, someone who gained satisfaction only through violence and death. Probably married with a job requiring travel. The profile would prove remarkably accurate. Physical evidence was limited, but telling. Semen samples suggested blood type AB. Shoe prints showed large size, 11.5. Witnesses described a tall, thin man, mid-40s to 50s, wearing glasses. By 1984, the body count was staggering. March, 10-year-old Dmitry Patashnikov found with 54 wounds. April, 10-year-old Tanya Petrosian. Injuries so severe determining gender was initially difficult. May brought perhaps the most calculated crime. Chikatilo encountered Tatiana Petrosian, a woman he knew from past encounters at the train station. He convinced her to bring her 11-year-old daughter Svetlana for a picnic. They traveled by train to isolated woods. He got Tatiana to lie down, then attacked her with a knife and hammer. When Svetlana heard her mother's screams and ran back, Chikatilo chased her through the forest. He caught her, stabbed her, beat her with the hammer, then severed her head completely. September 13th, 1984. A breakthrough that should have ended everything. Police spotted a tall man in a black fur cap at Rostov bus station, approaching young girls repeatedly. They watched him for hours. He spoke to one girl after another. Finally, he fondled a woman at the station. They arrested him. His name, Andrei Chikatilo. They searched his briefcase. Inside, rope, knife, Vaseline. Exactly what the profile suggested the perpetrator would carry. They questioned him extensively, checked his background. Former teacher, forced to resign from multiple schools for inappropriate behavior with students, allegations of assaults, history of crossing boundaries with children. Everything fit. They took blood samples to compare with crime scene evidence. The blood was type A. The semen from crime scenes was type AB. Different types. He couldn't be the perpetrator. They released him. What investigators didn't know, Chikatilo was a non-sequitur, a rare biological condition affecting about 20% of the population. His blood was genuinely type A, but all other bodily fluids showed as type AB. This quirk, combined with laboratory limitations of the era, cleared him as a suspect. Other charges kept him locked up briefly for stealing from work. He served only 3 months, released in December 1984. The missed opportunity was devastating. Between September 1984 and his final arrest in November 1990, Chikatilo would take at least 30 more lives. The mid to late 1980s brought accelerating horror as Chikatilo refined his methods and grew bolder. August 1985, 18-year-old Natalia Poklistova disappeared near Moscow's Domodedovo airport. Her body was found 2 days later. Days later, 18-year-old Irina Gulyaeva agreed to go with Chikatilo in exchange for shelter. Her body was found the next day. May 1987. 12-year-old Oleg Makarov was a boarding school student waiting at a railway station. Chikatilo lured him away. The boy's body was found the next day in Woodland. September 1987. Chikatilo traveled to Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, and took the life of 16-year-old Yuri Tereshinok on a train. The boy's remains wouldn't be found for years. The geographical spread was enormous now. From Ukraine to Uzbekistan, from Rostov to Leningrad. He was using the Soviet railway system to access victims across thousands of miles. 1988 brought 8 confirmed victims. One particularly disturbing case occurred in February 1989 at his daughter's apartment. 16-year-old Tatiana Rijova was inside the apartment with Chikatilo. After the attack, he realized he couldn't leave the body there. He dismembered her, covered the parts with a blanket, tied everything to a sled, and dragged it through the streets to dispose of the remains. May 1989. 8-year-old Alexei Moiseyev was taken just 1 day after his birthday. The youngest victim was 10-year-old Alexei Kobatov in August 1989. Chikatilo approached him outside a cinema. The boy simply vanished. By 1990, political changes in the Soviet Union created new opportunities for investigators. Glasnost, openness, meant law enforcement could operate with more transparency. Resources increased, coordination improved. January 1990. 11-year-old Andrei Kravchenko was taken from the streets of Shakhty. His body was found over a month later. March. 10-year-old Yaroslav Makarov skipped school and went to the train station. Chikatilo approached him there. Yaroslav's body was found the next day in Rostov's botanical gardens, viciously harmed. October 17, 1990. 16-year-old Vadim Gromov, a student with learning difficulties, disappeared after riding a train. His body was discovered October 30th. October 30th, 1990. The offense that would lead to Chikatilo's capture. 16-year-old Viktor Tishchenko was at a railway station under police surveillance. Officers weren't deployed that specific day due to staffing shortages. Viktor fought hard, broke Chikatilo's finger, bit him. When his body was found a week later, investigators knew the perpetrator would be injured. November 6th, 1990. 22-year-old Svetlana Korostik, homeless, was attacked in Woodland. Her body was found 7 days later. Evidence showed rushed execution. more physical evidence than usual. November 20th, 1990. Sergeant Igor Rybakov was stationed near Donlesko's station when he spotted a tall, sweaty man emerging from the woods. Blood on his cheek, bandage on his finger. The man washed his shoes and cleaned his coat at a water pump. Rybakov approached, asked for identification. Andrei Chikatilo, age 54, supply clerk. Rybakov filed a report but let him go. No specific reason to detain. Days later, Svetlana's body was found in those same woods. When investigators reviewed suspicious person reports from the area, Chikatilo's name appeared. Then someone remembered. This was the same name from 1984. Same suspicious behavior. Same items in briefcase. They checked his whereabouts on specific dates. His work records showed he'd been in locations where crimes occurred on those exact days. November 20th, 1990. 3 plainclothes officers approached Chikatilo outside a cafe. He was carrying his briefcase. Rope, knife, Vaseline still inside. He didn't resist. Didn't speak during the 40-minute drive to headquarters. The manhunt was over. Initial interrogation went nowhere. Chikatilo denied everything. They could only hold him 10 days without formal charges. Dr. Bukovsky changed tactics. Instead of aggressive questioning, he appealed to Chikatilo's intelligence and need for recognition. Treated him as a unique case worthy of study. Made him feel special. It worked. November 30th. Chikatilo began talking. At first about his childhood, the stories of cannibalism, his intimacy problems. Then, slowly, about the crimes. December 5th. Full confession. He'd been accused of 36 offenses. He confessed to 56. Over the following weeks, he led police to unmarked graves, revealed bodies they hadn't discovered, used mannequins to demonstrate his methods with disturbing precision. He justified everything in his mind. Victims were low-class people who didn't deserve to exist, women who were asking for it, runaways who wanted trouble. The psychological study revealed someone split into 2 people. He kept normal family life while doing terrible things. April 14th, 1992. The trial began in Rostov-on-Don. Chikatilo was kept in a metal cage throughout proceedings. Standard practice for dangerous defendants, but also necessary to protect him from victim families who filled the courtroom. He was formally charged with 53 counts of ending lives. The 56 he confessed to, minus 3 they couldn't prove. Throughout the trial, Chikatilo's behavior was bizarre. Singing, shouting nonsense. His defense argued mental incompetence, but forensic psychiatrists determined otherwise. While clearly disturbed, he understood his actions, knew right from wrong, was competent to stand trial. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, physical evidence from scenes, his own confessions, witness identifications. The case was solid. The psychological study revealed someone split into 2 people. He kept normal family life while doing terrible things. Played with his grandchildren after returning from crimes. Went to Communist Party meetings between attacks. October 15th, 1992. After months of testimony, the jury deliberated several hours. They returned guilty verdicts on 52 of 53 counts. One case from 1978 couldn't be proven definitively. He was sentenced to execution, 19 separate instances of the highest penalty Russian law allowed. When the verdict was read, the courtroom erupted in applause. Victim families wept with relief. Outside, celebrations broke out. Chikatilo's response was to shout from his cage, calling the judge a swindler and demanding a lawyer. His final words to the court: "Why me? Show me the corpses." Appeals continued for nearly 2 years. Chikatilo's lawyers filed motion after motion. All were denied. President Boris Yeltsin refused a final appeal for mercy. The sentence stood. February 14, 1994. Valentine's Day. Exactly 16 years after his first victim. Andrei Chikatilo was led from his cell in Novocherkassk prison to a private execution chamber. A single shot was fired behind his right ear. Death was instantaneous. He was 53 years old. His body was cremated. Ashes disposed of without ceremony. He was buried in an unmarked grave at the prison cemetery. Fitting, since he'd created so many unmarked graves himself. For the families of 53 victims, his execution brought limited closure. Some felt relief. Others felt empty. Many said no punishment could equal what he'd done. Chikatilo's case forced fundamental changes in Soviet and Russian law enforcement. Better interjurisdictional coordination, improved forensic capabilities, acceptance that psychological profiling was valuable. Most importantly, acknowledgement that such offenders could exist anywhere, regardless of political system. We remember the victims. Yelena Zakotnova, 9. Larisa Tkachenko, 17. Lyubov Biryuk, 13. Dmitry Ptashnikov, 10. Svetlana and Tatiana Petrosyan, mother and daughter. And 47 others whose names deserve to be spoken more than their offenders ever should. They were real people with hopes and dreams, reduced to case numbers in history's darkest files. Their absence echoes through generations. If this story shows you anything, it's that vigilance matters. Communities protecting their vulnerable matters. Speaking up when something feels wrong matters. Share this reminder that monsters don't announce themselves. Sometimes they wear glasses and carry briefcases. Stay aware, stay connected, and never forget the ones we lost.